Captain Craig Mills, I'm going to give you a presentation on the new hose and nozzles that are going to be rolling out. So I'm going to go through here. I'll be checking my notes and everything. So this is the new hose we're going to be receiving. This is the 1 3/4 version. You'll either see it in yellow or blue. This is the 2.5 version. Most of the new stuff's going to be red. You might see some yellow out there that was delivered at some point. So what you need to know is this is the brand of hose is Matex. The type is Cobra Combat. And the big thing about this hose has been designed for our use. So it allows, there's good kink resistance here. We have good high flows, and it supports low pressure nozzles. This is the internal diameter of these hoses is going to be a little bit smaller, something you'll notice as well. So it'll be easier to grip, and they'll have less water weight in the line as it's charged with water. So this is actually a 1.77, this is 2.52. So you'll notice when they're charged with water, they're going to be a lot smaller in diameter than our current stuff. And like I said, the big reason for this change is we're trying to buy stuff that supports our end goal of the flow in the right volume on fires, 150 GPM on our residential fires, and 250 GPM on our commercial fires. And then also these support low pressure nozzles, as I said. That helps the end user of the firefighters being able to flow the line, handle it appropriately. And so other notes on the line I'm going to go through here. Robust construction. I could go into some of the construction, but it's just a little bit too into the weeds. Essentially, there's one contiguous hose inside. There's like a nitrile rubber extruded through the weave. So it's like a rubber lining, rubber hose inside with a protective jacket over the exterior. And then all those benefits I talked about. Some of the downsides of this hose is it's a little bit heavier. It has more material that supports the low pressure nozzles, reduces kinks, and obviously makes it more durable for us. That's just something we're going to notice going on. And then obviously, when we flow water through this, it might be a little bit puffy. There's some techniques you can do to roll the line out, kind of calling the onion technique, and you'll see videos on how to do that. The hose is designed with superior heat resistance. So it's going to resist burning through more than our current stuff. Due to the interior lining, the exterior jacket is designed to be a little bit safer for us. So other notes I have in here as to why we choose this, like the big thing is old versus new. Why does this affect you, right? These allow for, especially the 1 3/4, allows for a smooth bore option for our interior attack lines. Some of the benefits of our smooth bore, it's going to be better reach, greater penetration, larger droplet size. So it's going to be able to coat and cool the environment before burning up and evaporating. So this is going to support our flows of 150 to 160 GPM. This is going to be 250 to 265 GPM, all above the minimum standard for what we need to do. This is going to allow us to be able to get into buildings, flow and move, which is the goal. Care and maintenance, wash it just like we've been doing. You can also just rinse it off and load it up wet. It's not going to cause any problems to the hose. When they did say leaving it outside, I asked the manufacturer, and they said the only thing it's going to really do is just kind of take out some of the color in the lining. It's not going to do any damage. So, and then like we talked about, the safety interior for firefighters, this rubber jacket on the inside is going to do better for us. Our older hose, it's that black liner that everybody's familiar with, and that has the tendency to delaminate, come apart, obstruct that waterway. That's when you see kind of the water leaking through the center of the hose. That's what's happened. The liner's delaminated, cracked, and is leaking through. So our new hose is going to last a little bit longer and be a little bit more durable for us. So a couple more things to note on the 1 3/4 setup, that you'll see this in blue and yellow hose. And the idea is when you go up to the cross lay in the middle of the night, you'll see 100 feet that'll be yellow and 100 feet that'll be blue. The yellow has been typically the attack section, and the blue has been the supply section. So you deploy the hose appropriately, and then you can also see when you're in the front of the house what hose is going in the building, and those types of things. It can also play benefit to us when these become our apartment loads. One apartment load could be yellow, one apartment load could be blue, and then one of those would be, you would signify, would have the Y on it. So you could look at the back of the rig, you don't you know which one has the Y and which one doesn't. So that's just something to note on the 1 3/4 line. You'll see this in blue and yellow. Inch 3/4 nozzles. So the first thing we have here is our bail. This is our 1.5 inch shutoff. So this is an 1.5 inch connection and 1.5 inch outlet here. Just a standard waterway, and this is what's going to be on all our 1 3/4 lines. The benefit of this breakaway is it does 3 things for us that you'll see some videos on. We can go with the fog tip, we can go with the smoothbore tip, and we can also extend off of this with an apartment load if we needed to. So that's the big benefit of why we went with this setup. Obviously too, it can clear debris out if you had some sort of obstruction. As you can see too, you can see right through it, so we don't have any internal mechanisms. There's nothing that the water needs to pass through our current nozzles. There's spinning teeth, there's different selectors on there, and a lot of components that water needs to pass through. So again, low maintenance and good flows. And again, we talked about these nozzles are going to be 50 psi. Talking about the big reason for that is our nozzle reaction. So with our old hose, 150 GPM at 100 psi nozzle pressure, our nozzle reaction is 75 pounds. With this new stuff, it's going to be a fog nozzle, 150 GPM at 50 pounds psi, 50 psi, and we're going to have 54 pounds of nozzle reaction. With the smoothbore, again, 50 psi, 160 GPM, and our nozzle reaction is 60 pounds. So everything's below the standard of 69 to 65 pounds that we talked about to be below. So looking at the nozzle, this is just a nozzle tip. Same thing, straight stream, can go to fog. We can also have a really good flush here. And when you flush it, you can actually see kind of how the nozzle works. You can also almost see daylight through there at times. There's really nothing that the water has to pass through. It goes through, hits this deflector, and then is shaped by the stream here. So no internal components really to this. And you can see on the end here, it is a 150 at 50 psi. That's the big difference from this whole setup for us. The smoothbore, important to check these. This is one of our safety concerns with this. When we talk about the 2.5 is mixing these up. So this is one of those checks in the morning to make sure you have the right tip. This is a 7/8 inch tip, and you can see at 50 psi we're getting 161 GPM. So, and again, there's going to be no real set standard. This is going to be crew specific as to which nozzle tips you want to run, if you want to run all fog or all smoothbore. And all you have to do is twist it on there and it's ready to go. Again, another morning check to make sure it's on there tight, okay? And then if you want to switch them out, you just break it apart and switch your tip out. To make it simple, since these flows are going to be so similar, both this fog and the smoothbore flow at 50 psi, our pump chart pressures are going to be the same. Since it's so close. It's 150 GPM versus 160 GPM at 50 psi nozzle pressure. Our friction loss is going to be the same in the hose, so it's going to be real simple on the pump chart. And this is what your 1 3 nozzles, or your 1 3/4 hose line nozzle is going to look like. Again, we have Metro 1, and we have the 7/8 inch tip, and your 1.5 to 1.5 inch connection. One thing, another safety concern here is if you're flowing water and I go right to fight, and if I go too hard on this, I can actually screw the tip off. So again, make sure it's very, very easy to adjust this. There's no real force that's required. So again, just a safety concern that people need to train with is make sure you don't go too far off. If at any point it's leaking, just get your hands on these lugs here and tighten it down. All right, so this is our setup for our 2.5. This is our shutoff for that. It is a 2.5 inlet here and the 1.5 inch outlet. So again, we can connect to our tips. We can also connect to an apartment load and extend right here. So good option for us to have without even having to shut down the line. Again, you can see just your standard ball valve, No obstructions, nothing that the water has to pass through, and just your standard 2.5 shut off, 2.5 to 1.5 inch. Our first connection here is we have our Metro 2 nozzle for our 2.5. This one flows at 250 GPM at 50 PSI. So again, 50 PSI nozzle, it's a big change for us. I talked a little bit about the nozzle reaction. This is where you're gonna notice it the most, where it goes from 125 on our current setup to 89 pounds. So much, much easier to flow. Again, to connect here, connect it right on the end. Twist to make sure it's tight. Check that every day. And then your fog function acts as normal. And then I was showing on the last one, as you open this up, you can see the deflector that the water hits and that there's no real internal components. Water goes through, hits that deflector, and then is shaped by the barrel here of the nozzle. This is our next nozzle tip. This is the 1.1 inch tip. That's going to give us at 50 PSI, 266 GPM. So this is the same that we roll with on all our high-rise. This is our high-rise standard. So again, we have 250 GPM here, 265 GPM. Both operate at 50 PSI nozzle pressure. Our pump pressures are going to be same on the pump chart. And then the same thing happens here. You screw it on, make sure it's on there tight. And that's our 2.5 nozzle package. Now I'll go into one of the safety concerns that we have with these nozzles. Here, we're not gonna be able to mix this up because this goes on 1.75 inch hose, this goes on 2.5 hose. There's not really much to switch up there. The concern is with these nozzles, they look fairly similar, but you can tell one's quite a bit bigger, one's Metro 2. This is for our 2.5, this is for our 1.75 inch line. And it's very important that we don't get these mixed up. They're not gonna support each other. If we have this nozzle on a 2.5, remember we talked about 150 GPM, that's not gonna be enough to fight a large fire or commercial fire. Same thing, if this goes on the 1.75 inch, or if this goes on 1.75 inch, our stream's gonna be broken, it's not gonna be matching up with the flow that we have and the pressures that we have. So really important to keep those two on the right lines. The next one is gonna be even more of a concern because at first glance, these look very similar, right? Just looking at them out here, it's very easy to get these two mixed up. That's the one that we can see getting switched up the most. So again, make sure you check. This one is the 1.1 inch, that's for your 2.5. This one's the 7/8. But just at rough glance, you can't really tell, right? But you can tell when you take a quick look. So those are part of your morning checks. Make sure that those are on there tight. Make sure that the right lines are on the right nozzles, tips are on the right nozzles. So one of the things to keep in mind is the rubber gaskets that are in here. If at any point your nozzle's leaking, to check to make sure that this is still intact and in place. We have seen, since these are they're very new, they're pliable. I'll show you right here. They're pliable. We've seen at times, if this nozzle is on here and it's a little bit loose, that water running through there can push the gasket out and push it through the nozzle. I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So again, the importance of making sure that this is on here tight, avoid any leaks, and to keep that gasket in place. And what that'll look like is if you're flowing it, we've had reports when we've been testing this, let me try and pop this out. These gaskets come out pretty easy. So what these guys were doing, they're flowing water, and they're flowing water and they're getting a broken stream and they don't know what's going on. Your stream is obstructed. You can throw it full of fog, and if you see it sticking out, you can fish it out. Fish it out this time, or just grab a pen and grab it and fish it out. And then just put it back in place. So that's just a safety and just a maintenance concern, is that if these are ever missing or lost, you'll have to call the warehouse to get some new ones. And then just set it back in there. And again, to avoid that is just to make sure that this is on the nozzle nice and tight. So in this next section, we're going to see some of the skills. So here the firefighters are demonstrating the clamp. You can see that their foot is trapping the hose beneath them. And again, it's important to note, as the nozzle opens, their hand can come, the nozzle bail will go off to the left, and their hand can drop right behind the coupling there to direct the stream in all directions. The nozzle tips out far enough in front of them so they can hit the ceiling, the walls, floor, in all directions. Here the firefighters are demonstrating the Camella lock-off. Again, can be found in the hose lay manual in section 6. The right leg's up, the right arm really traps the hose and squeezes it into the body, and the hand placements are the same. You open the nozzle up fully, and then your hand can drop right behind the coupling there to direct the stream wherever it needs to go. Here the firefighters are demonstrating the hip grip, again using that right hand to drive the hose into your hip, into your core there to control the nozzle reaction. Bail's off to the left, hand drops behind the bail and can direct the stream wherever it needs to go. Again, you're seeing the benefits of this line with low nozzle reaction. The firefighters are easily able to handle the fire stream. Here's the hip grip again, just in a standing orientation. Again, the line's fully open. Hand drops right behind the nozzle. And as you can see, the firefighters are easily able to handle this nozzle reaction and flow the minimum 150 to 160 GPMs. So here you're going to see the same hose handling techniques, only with the 2.5. And again, this is where we're going to have the biggest difference. That 2.5-inch line is now smaller, so it's easier to grip. And then also with the low pressure nozzles, the nozzle reaction is a lot more manageable for the firefighters. This is where you're going to see a big difference. So you'll see the firefighters using those same hose handling techniques here with the 2.5 and managing the nozzle reaction pretty well. Here the firefighters demonstrating how easy it is to take off the nozzle tip and switch out tips if for whatever reason you needed to do this in the field. Again, it's just best to in the morning to check that these the right nozzle tips are on there, that you have fogs or smoothbores, whatever you like, and make sure it's on there tight. Here's going to be a big change for us operationally. That'll allow us to extend off the 1 3/4 line if we ever needed to without shutting the line down. All you need to do is radio to the engineer that you're extending off the 1 3/4 with an apartment load, and the engineer will make the adjustments. Firefighters simply just take off the nozzle tip, connect the apartment load, this would be a good time to radio the engineer that we're extending off the tip. As they're ready, deploy the load, you can charge it, and then work on flushing the line. And now we have 300 feet of 1 3/4 to get to where we need to go. Here's some video of just a good practice to do if we are extending off the nozzle, to use the Velcro straps off the apartment load to strap the bail open so that it doesn't get accidentally closed. And you can see here the firefighter is going to kind of kick the nozzle, and you can see that the bail barely moved there. It just takes some practice. There's some different techniques to do. As you can see, these straps are a little bit long, so he wraps it around a couple times and then is able to pretty easily strap this nozzle down, this bail open, so that we can safely fight fire interior off of extending these lines. So here what we're going to show is another good operational change for us, where we can extend off the 2.5 with one apartment load and not requiring to shut down the whole line. We simply close the nozzle, twist off the tip, connect the apartment load onto the tip here, communicate to the engineer that we are now extending off of the 2.5 with one apartment load. The engineer will make the pressure changes, and then we will go into charging the line, advancing, and using the Velcro straps or webbing to secure the nozzle in an open position. Here's another video of securing the bail open after extending off of the 2.5. And we'll take the Velcro strap, wrap it around a couple times to secure it, to ensure that the bail doesn't get accidentally closed. And this is a 2.5 extending to one apartment load. This is a video showing how to use webbing to secure the nozzle in an open position if for whatever reason you didn't have a Velcro strap available to you. And then it's just good to remind that even if we are extending off of a Y, it's in our best interest to use a Velcro strap to secure it in the open position for safety in case that does accidentally get closed. In this next section, you're just going to see some firefighters practicing flowing while moving. Again, with the nozzle reaction changes here, lower nozzle reaction, the firefighter is able to do this much easier than they would with our current hose setup. This is, again, the end goal. The reason why we did this whole study was to lower nozzle reaction for firefighters to allow us to have a manageable hose line interior. So you're going to see some different techniques and some different methods. Again, take this hose out, go practice with your crews to figure out what works best for you. I referenced this a little bit earlier in the presentation. This is just a method you can use to load the hose up to keep it rolled up and keep the air out of it, because again, this hose is a little bit new, it's a little bit thicker, and it might have some air in there. So you can just roll it up and then peel away the layers, one to each side. And it just depends. We have different engines, so whichever coupling you're going to start with, roll that up onto the inside and then peel away those layers, one to each side, and the hose will play out pretty nicely. As you can see in this video, you can load up 50 feet. Here, no problem, the twists come out. And so this is just a technique to overcome some of the air that may be trapped in the hose and may help us out in our loading techniques. So just in closing, this is our new hose and nozzle package that we're going to see rolling out here soon. Matex Cobra Combat hose. The big thing is that this supports low pressure nozzles with the fire flows that we need of 150 GPM for residential, 250 GPM for commercial. So that's all I have. Thank you.